Good evening, everyone. It's always good to be in the house of the Lord. What we are looking at tonight is the 10 plagues that God put upon Egypt. I told you, since it was so many chapters, kind of keep it brief. You don't have to do a full chapter summary on every single one of them. But what would you do, the C, first C, caption, what chapter, what title would you give the 10 plagues of Egypt, besides the 10 plagues of Egypt? You might want to give it that title, I don't know. As I was studying, I couldn't help but think of God's wrath.
Mine was don't mess with God.
Yeah. Don't mess with God. That's a good one. The second C is content.
Somebody said something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They will say Pharaoh was stubborn.
Yeah.
What was that?
Pharaoh's
Stubborn.
Pharaoh stubborn. Yeah, because that's something at the very end. What's that C? Challenges. List any difficulties, and that's one of the ones I listed. Anybody else? All right, let's move on to the contents. Now, I will tell you that some of the things I'm fixing to share is extra biblical. I don't mean it's super biblical. The word extra biblical means it's not in the Bible. Scholars have done research from history and culture, and I'm going to share that with you guys tonight. The first plague, you will find that in Exodus chapter 7, verses 14 through 25. The first plague is the turning of the water from the Nile River into blood. This plague destroyed the water sources of Egypt. It killed the fish, preventing access to even drinking water. But it also hit the very element of Egyptian culture. The Nile itself is a symbol of life, fertility, prosperity, and connection to their divine. It was very sacred to the Egyptians. The god of the Nile, Hapi, and Osiris, who was also associated with the river and its cycle of life and death, are challenged here. Again, you won't find this part in the Bible, but you'll see there's a reason that scholars believe this is God, he wasn't just willy-nilly about what he chose for the plagues. There was a reason. He was going to show Pharaoh and the Hebrew people he is the only God. So, Hapi and Osiris are challenged. The Nile was considered the flow of life for the country. Transforming it into blood symbolized a direct interpretation of this vital flow, showing the vulnerability of the Egyptian gods before God's power. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if someone came and said, I'm a spokesman for God, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to turn the Tennessee River into blood through God's power. Well, we'd probably all scratch our heads, right? But what if it happened the next week? I would hope we would start to pay attention. But it's kind of like Brother Rick said, and Brother Bill alluded to, Pharaoh is he's so disconnected. Let's look at the second plague. The second plague is the frogs. That's Exodus 8, verses 1 through 15. The second plague was a big invasion of frogs. It is filling every single living space. While frogs often represent fertility and regeneration in many cultures, in uncontrolled abundance, You got to admit, this is just pure, total chaos. Frogs everywhere. This plague directly challenges Hecate, the goddess of fertility and childbirth, who was depicted with the head of a frog. For the Egyptians, Hecate symbolized renewal and life, but in this case, the frogs became an uncontrollable nuisance invading all areas of their daily life. By turning frogs, a symbol of fertility, into a plague, God is showing these people that uncontrolled abundance leads to chaos and that Hecate has no power over creation or the balance of life. Let's continue going to the third plague, the gnats. Exodus 8, verses 16 through 19. The third plague turns the dust of the earth into lice, gnats, or possibly even mosquitoes, it's mentioned, affecting both people and animals. These insects are hard to kill and they cause irritation and disease. This plague challenged Geb, the god of the earth and the fertility of soil. For the Egyptians, the dust of the earth was a symbol of life and fertility as it supported plants and animals. By transforming the dust into a source of discomfort and disease, God again is showing that even the fundamental element of the earth, supposedly under the protection of Geb, can become an instant instrument of suffering. The fourth plague, flies. Exodus 8, verses 20 through 32. The fourth plague is a swarm of flies that invade Egypt, making life impossible. Flies, instead of being harmless, become a source of disorder and nuisance that invades every corner of the nation of Egypt. This plague confronts Khepri, the god of creation and rebirth, who was associated with insects, especially the scarab. Khepri symbolized orderly creation and renewal. However, by filling the land with annoying and invasive insects, God is showing that He is over all of creation. The plague of flies symbolizes that the true power over life and order belongs to the one true living God. The fifth plague, death of the livestock. Exodus 9, verses 1 through 7. The fifth plague sends a deadly disease. And back up, you guys probably know this story. You've heard it since you were toddlers. But it's kind of like Brother Rick said, over. How many of these plagues is it going to take? The fifth plague sends a deadly disease that affects all of Egypt's livestock, devastating their agricultural economy and leaving the population without vital resources. Here, God challenges Hathor, the goddess of motherhood and fertility, depicted as a cow, and Apis, the bull god, a symbol of fertility and strength. For the Egyptians, livestock represented wealth, health, and economic stability. The destruction of the livestock reveals that even symbols of abundance and fertility can be taken away, and that Hathor and Apis are incapable of protecting or preserving animal life under their domain. The sixth plague, boils. Exodus 9, verses 8 through 12. The sixth plague sends boils that affect both humans and the remaining animals across that region. This plague directly challenges Sekhmet, the goddess of healing and protection, known for driving away diseases and keeping her people safe. This plague emphasizes that health and disease are in the hands of God, and the Egyptian gods are incapable of offering true protection or healing. The seventh plague, hail. Exodus 9, verses 13 through 35. The seventh plague is a hailstorm, accompanied by fire which destroys crops, trees, and kills both people and animals. This plague challenges Nut, the goddess of the sky, responsible for controlling the weather and protecting the heavens. The storm destroys crops and trees, causing agricultural devastation that strikes at the heart of Egypt's economy. Nut's inability to stop the storm shows that power over heaven and earth belongs to God, not Egyptian deities. The eighth plague is locust. Exodus 10, verses 1 through 20. A plague of locusts invade Egypt, devouring what remains of the vegetation after the hailstorm that left the land desolate. This plague affects Seth, the god of chaos and destruction, and Napor, the god of grain. The locusts consume the crops, destroying Egypt's food security, showing that neither Seth nor Napor can prevent hunger or despair by leaving the land lifeless. This plague symbolizes God's power over sustenance and prosperity. The ninth plague, darkness. Exodus 10, verses 21 through 29. This plague plunges Egypt into dense darkness that lasts for 3 days, completely paralyzing daily life. Think about how much animals, vegetation, everything needs light. The darkness is a direct confrontation with Ra. You might have heard that name. He's very famous in movies and stuff because he was one of the main gods of Egypt. Ra is the sun god and symbol of life and energy. In a culture that worshiped the sun, this thick darkness represented a foretaste of death. Ra's inability to dispel the darkness shows that light and life depend on God, not Ra. The 10th plague, the last plague, the death of the firstborn. Exodus 11, 1 through 10, and Exodus 12 through 29. Finally, God sends death upon all the firstborns of Egypt. Now, here's a question some of you may know. What God do you think is being challenged with this? If you know Egyptian culture, Pharaoh himself. Pharaohs truly believed that they were gods. They believed that. The final blow was an attack on Pharaoh himself, who was considered a living god, and on other deities as well, Isis and Osiris, protectors of life. The loss of their firstborn shows that neither Pharaoh nor any other god can protect their families. The 10th plague reveals that the power of life and death belongs solely to God. All right, I read over the outline, the contents. I told you to try to make it brief because there's a lot there. Did anybody have anything they would like to add that you might have found in your research on the 10 plagues of Egypt? The third C is chief people. What important people did you find in these handful of chapters? Pharaoh. Moses. Aaron.
The magicians.
Huh?
The magicians.
I got that one. Yeah, y'all remember that the magicians, they were actually able to do a little bit of this, but it was all fake. I mean, we know God's in control. But yeah, the magicians, God. The fourth C is a choice verse. Choose a verse that brings a main point or speaks to you personally. I chose Exodus 7:5. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the Israelites from among them. So the question is why? God said they're going to know that I'm God when I get done with them. What was a verse that spoke to you in your studies this past week? We'll move on to number 5. Fifth C is crucial words. Write down key words that you came across in your study. And mine goes into the 6th C, because I'm like Brother Rick. One thing that I kept seeing over and over and over was the term hardened heart. Because that's a challenge and it's a crucial word. What does that mean? Because why would the one true living God, that's the God of love, harden Pharaoh's heart? That ain't fair, right? Well, you got to really do a study on what that term means. What that term means is God continued to allow Pharaoh to harden his own heart. Because when you get to the New Testament, it says that at a certain point, God will turn sinners over to their reprobate minds. There comes a point where God says, it's on you now. He tried and tried and tried to work with Pharaoh.
Didn't Pharaoh, with the death of his son, didn't he bring that on himself? Didn't he order something to be done? Remember what it was. He was going to have something done, and when he did that, Moses said that he brought it on himself by bringing that.
Yeah, Pharaoh caused all this.
Didn't he say he would kill the firstborn?
I'm sorry?
Didn't Pharaoh say to kill the firstborn? Isn't he the one that killed all
He's talking about when he threw the baby in the Nile.
the...
Because he
Because he said...
Back to Exodus 1
Because he said to kill the firstborn.
of the Hebrew kids.
God turned it around and killed their firstborn instead.
You know, I've never made that connection.
Yeah, it says that somewhere. I ain't found it yet again.
Oh, I think John's alluding to Exodus chapter 1, right? Where what I just preached, where he commands to throw the babies in the Nile and kill all the firstborn males or all the males.
Because he did that, God turned it around on him and killed their firstborn.
Yeah. It's possible. I've never made that connection.
Well, that's where Moses got saved
Yeah.
Yeah.
from death to follow out this plan that God had in mind all along.
And when we get to Christ's scene, I'll add a little bit more to some of that. Any other crucial words or challenges? I didn't find a ton, but did you guys find any cross references? I don't think I'll read it all because it's quite a bit. But Psalm 78, verses 42 through 51, the psalmist writes, "They did not remember his power shown on the day he redeemed them from the foe, when he performed his miraculous signs in Egypt and his wonders in the territory of Zoan. He turned their rivers into blood, and they could not drink from the streams. He sent among them swarms of flies, frogs," and he goes on and lists all of those things, the psalmist does, in Psalm 78, 42 through 51. Then the psalmist writes in Psalm 105, verses 27 through 36. Again, I'm not going to read it all, but it says, "They performed his miraculous signs among them and wonders in the land of Ham. He sent darkness and it became dark, for they did not defy his commands. He turned their water into blood and caused their fish to die. Their land was overrun with frogs." And it talks about insects. And it talks about these 10 plagues because the psalmist is like, guys, remember. Remember the power that God placed. Now, it would take 100 pages to do cross references on my next one. Christ's scene, of course, that's the Passover, right? And as Christians, as New Testament believers, the Passover is just the ultimate symbolism of Christ. Can you imagine those Hebrew people that night They go slaughter their best lamb. They take that blood and they put it over the doorpost. And when the angel of death came for the firstborn, when he seen the blood sprinkled upon the door, he literally passed over their house. Now, church, the symbolism's this. We better have the blood upon us. Not our blood, not a lamb's blood, but the Lamb of God. The symbolism is Christ is that lamb. Christ is that Passover. It's only through Christ that we escape the penalty of death. For Paul says, for the Christian, death is just the next step. I don't think my little brain can really, I can preach it, I can teach it, I can say it, but I don't think my brain can truly comprehend that there's coming a time where I'm going to take my last breath, and then within a split second, the twinkling of an eye, I will open my eyes face to face with Christ. Guys, Gina used to sing that old hymn all the time. Don would make her. What a day that'll be. Man, there's truth in that. Anybody got anything to add before I move on? I'm going to try to get out of here a few minutes early. We do have business meeting. Central lessons. What major principles and insights have you learned? I think the biggest one is God is a jealous God. Now, we don't like that term because sometimes we see jealous as a negative thing. But listen to Exodus 34:14. Because the Lord is jealous for his reputation, you are never to bow down to another God. He is a jealous God. God loves us that much that he don't want us worshiping other gods. The Hebrew people were in the land of the Egyptians, but they weren't to worship those false gods. God is a jealous God. The second thing, God is all powerful. He shows this all throughout Scripture. These same people are fixing to go on the Exodus. They're going to get to the sea, and they're going to see that sea split and have dry land. It's amazing to me the power that God shows his people in the Old Testament. But you know what? That type of power, it can't compare to the power that he shows in the New Testament. The true power is when he conquered death and Hades. The true power is when he rose again. That not only he will live forever, but through him, we too can live forever. Conclusion, apply this chapter to our daily lives. I got, 8 words. I must seek God first and obey him. It's that simple. That's all he asked of his people right here. I must seek God first and obey him. The 10 Commandments, like I said, we've heard these stories since we were little. I'm sure Tina's probably taught it to the preschoolers and stuff. But as adults, I think we see the true power of God in these things. And like I told you, I warned you, it's extra biblical. But, there was a reason God chose gnats. There was a reason God chose frogs. And this is the reason that these scholars go back and they study the culture of what was going on in Egypt and their false gods, because God said, I'm going to show them that I'm the one true living God, not these false gods. All right. Our homework next week is just one chapter. I'm going to make it easier. Let's do a chapter summary of Leviticus chapter 10. A chapter summary of Leviticus chapter 10. I hope you guys at home are enjoying this. I hope you're keeping up with your studies, going through these chapter summaries and other things that we've done. If you do need anything, please call me, email me. Know that we do love you, appreciate you, and are praying for you. And I hope to see you soon. Bye.